All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of Healedish. I am so excited about today's guest because I have Gabrielle Stone on, and you might recognize her from her book or from TikTok. And I ended up reading her book, Eat, Pray, Fuck My Life, back in, I think, 2019. And it is a story that has just always stuck with me. So I am so excited to have you come on and share your story.
Thank you. I love the title of this podcast. It's very, very fitting for my story.
Yes, it's like healed-ish, the whole journey of, there's a lot to work through. So I was wondering if you could just get us started with kind of what it was like being raised in the arenas that you were and how that kind of led you on the path you went.
Yeah, totally. My mom is Dee Wallace, who is best known from being the mother in E.T. and 80s horror iconic movies like Cujo and The Howling and The Frighteners. And I grew up, I guess, in the area of Hollywood, if you will, but I had a really normal childhood. My dad was also an actor and director, and although there were moments that most people wouldn't have, like being on set and having my mom walk over and say, "Look, honey, this blood right here is fake. You can lick it off. It's corn syrup." Oh
my gosh, so you're on the horror movie sets.
Oh yeah. But apart from that, it was a really normal childhood. I always had someone at my dance recitals and my soccer games. And if one of my parents booked a job, then if it was more than a week out of town, we all went to keep the family together, which is really hard to do in an industry where it's kind of like take it as you come. And it was all pretty perfect growing up until I turned 7. And my mom was in New Zealand shooting a movie called The Frighteners. And I was back in Los Angeles with my dad and my nanny, who I'm still very, very close with. And I walked in to go wake my dad up for morning cartoons and found him dead on the floor from a heart attack, which is obviously pretty traumatic as a 7-year-old. And to not have my mom there during that time, and she had to get on a plane, fly 24 hours home, get all of his affairs in order, have his celebration of life, take me and my nanny back on a plane and fly back to go finish the film. And that was kind of my first experience of how to handle shit when your life blows up.
Yeah, because I can't even imagine getting that phone call when you're in New Zealand and then your young children are there having witnessed this, and then you have to go back to work right afterwards. I mean, I can't even imagine what that was like for her or for you guys, because your life has just changed so drastically, and all of a sudden you're on a plane to, okay, well, I guess we're going to New Zealand.
Yeah. I don't think at the time, I was so young, I don't think I realized the gravity of the situation. I obviously was very sad. But the work that I've done as an adult now to start unwrapping some of that trauma that I think my brain really locked away for a very long time. And even looking at the other aspects of the situation, like my nanny was 22 when that happened. Like imagine being 22 and having to manage that situation and have your boss call you and say, "I'm really sorry, I need you to take her back in to say goodbye to her dad," and like be in a room to do that for a little girl. Like it's the whole situation as an adult looking back on it now, what my mom had to endure, what she had to deal with, like, is wild to me.
Yeah. I was talking with my friend the other day, and we were talking about when people lose their children and their kids pass away. And she was saying, I always think to myself, I would never be able to be okay. And she said, but it's strange. You see people on TikTok, you hear people's stories, and people do every day. Somehow your body goes into this, we have to move forward. And that's kind of how I feel about your mom and the nanny, of how do you, if you had told them before that they were going to have to deal with that situation, they probably couldn't have fathomed that they would ever get through that.
Right.
But somehow they did in that moment.
Yeah, I think my mom, unfortunately, has gone through so many traumatic events in her life that she was almost prepared to deal with this one. She lost her father when she was 16. he shot himself in the head in the back of a bar. Sorry, we're like, eat, pray, fuck my life. This is the lightest episode you've ever had.
No, it's real.
Massive trigger warnings up and down.
Yeah.
And so she has lost many a people in her life. But I think, I resonate with what you're saying. I'm a mom now. And when I think of ever, I can't even, that, you're right. I can't fathom. I don't know if I would make it through that. My husband, my parents, like everyone else in my life, I'm like, I would find a way. My trauma brain has gone through those scenarios enough to be like, I would figure it out.
It's so real. It's just the fear of that. And then we'll get into that. You actually have a basis for that fear as well in multiple circumstances with your dad and then somebody else later on.
Yes.
So wow. So what was it like being in New Zealand? Do you remember much from that time? Obviously, you said it was hard to really process it at that young of an age.
I remember moments and kind of like flash memories, which is odd because I do that a lot throughout my life. And I'm now at the age where I'm like, is this PTSD? Do I need to do EMDR? Like, what's not being remembered? Or is it just because I was so young? But I do remember bits of New Zealand. I remember bits of being on that set. Peter Jackson was the director who did the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Lovely Bones and so many amazing films. And he was such a genuine human. He took such good care of my mom. She had to fly back and forth from New Zealand, I think 4 or 5 times, which is wildly expensive. And at the end of it, she went in to go, settle her bill. And the woman looked at her and was like, Peter's just absorbing it for you. It's taken care of. Don't worry about it. And she'll still break into tears when she tells that story. And, Michael J. Fox was playing opposite her. And I have memories of playing Foursquare with him on his downtime during set when he was dealing with the start of his illness and not letting anyone know. And it was the best possible Hollywood scenario for me to experience that tragedy in. Like, everyone there was so ready to support me and support my mom and kind of welcome us with open arms. And it ended up being a really positive experience even through the tragedy.
Yeah. So did you guys just go home back after? And what was it like readjusting to life? I can only imagine what it's like going back to the house where you were living there. Did you guys stay in that house?
Yeah, she still lives there, and we're actually renovating it right now for her to eventually move into an ADU that we're building on the property, and for me to take that home over with my family. So we've never left. That's the house I was brought home from the hospital to. Lots and lots of memories there. I think the only memory that I really have, sense memory, from returning after New Zealand is I started first grade at a school shortly after that, and that's the elementary school I stayed at from 1st to 6th grade. And I do remember the first day being like, oh, that's the one that lost her dad. And not in a negative way, just in a, like, let's all try and welcome her and be nice. And it felt like, oh, this is a new patch that I'm going to be wearing on my jacket for the rest of my life. And that's an interesting memory. I have not brought that up in one interview that I have done in the thousands I have done. But that was a really real moment for me to be like, oh, okay, this is now part of who I am.
Do you want to get into kind of going into high school and the people that you met there and then the tragedy that you also ended up enduring in high school? Yeah,
so it's really, I can say this now because I've healed and have so much perspective on it, but it's like almost funny how deeply I was trying to heal this fear of abandonment in my life. So obviously the first experience I had was my dad dying. And that was, when I love someone, they die. That was what my 7-year-old brain put together. And time had passed and, time does help heal a lot. And I had gone on to, go to therapy and live my life. And in high school, I fell so madly in puppy love with my first kind of real relationship. And I remember really thinking like, we're going to get married. This is as you do when you're in high school.
That's always how it is. And I kind of wish that for my kids in a way, because I look so kindly on my younger self and my high school relationships. It's such a sweet part of growing up to have that puppy love and really feel like, oh, this is going to be it. We're going to be together forever.
Completely. And I was very much in that Delulu headspace, for better or worse. And we were together for, I think it was 3 years. And I got a call one morning that there was a car accident, and there were 3 of them in the car. He was one of them, and 2 of them, including him, did not make it. And it really felt like that scab of fear of abandonment that had like healed and grown over just got ripped wide open. And it was like, oh, of course, when I love someone, they die. And it was that same subconscious belief that got reinstilled in me during that time. And I was 18 when that happened. And to go through 2 of those big losses, like sudden deaths, before your brain fully develops, I have a lot of compassion for the events that took place in my young adult life, because of course I was trying to protect myself and make myself feel safe. There's a lot of reworkings of the brain that you have to do after situations like that. And it's a really good blueprint of the groundwork that was happening for what was to come in my life. Like seeing that when I love someone, they die, connecting that with the fear of abandonment. And when we have those unhealed fears within us, our subconscious mind is going to attract those into our reality so that we can say, see, I told you, they're all going to leave. You're just going to be abandoned. You're not safe. So without healing those core wounds that I was dealing with so deeply, I just kept attracting people that would abandon me in my life.
Oh gosh. Yeah. And did you end up going to therapy at all during that time?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Now I've been in therapy on and off since I was heavy. 7. Yeah. No, I've been in therapy on and off since I was 7. And I'm like the biggest advocate, like go even when nothing's wrong. Go just to talk about like how your day went. It's such an important part of my life, of everybody's life. My current husband and I still go, if anything comes up when we need to just like have a third party to talk through things. I think it's so important.
Yeah. Well, that's great that you had therapy. And I can imagine that, just having those 2 wounds and moving into your adult life, what did it feel like trying to find your place in the world? I know you ended up, you're an actress. So how did you know that you wanted to do that as you entered into adulthood?
I think I knew, I said from early on, because my mom and dad were both in the industry, like, of course I'm going to be an actress. And let me set the stage with how I think people hear, oh, actress, and they equate that to money and fame. And although my mom did have and still has a really incredible career, she came from like poverty in Kansas. And my dad didn't work the last few years of his life. So when she lost him, she became a single mom that was like scrounging for work in an industry that's not kind to you all the time. And when I was working, quote, as an actress, I was scrounging to do independent films that were paying me $125 a day and being like over the moon if I could get those. Every actor has 3 other jobs to like keep themselves afloat. So I was working as an actress because I thought, of course, that's what I'm going to do. Like that's, what my mom did. I did love it. Whenever I would get the chance to be on set, I really did enjoy performing and doing that. And it ended up being an ironic career choice because that was what was kind of at the crux of breaking down my first marriage.
Oh, really? Okay. So do you want to go into how you guys met?
Sure.
And yeah, so I'm like, because at this point you're wanting somebody to kind of step in and for you to feel comfortable and feel safe. So what did you see in him that made you feel that way?
Oh,
at
it's
first?
so ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, and if y'all don't know the story, buckle up. It's insanity. Every time I see it across my For You page, it's, oh gosh,
I love it.
jaw-dropping.
I'm so glad. We actually met at a nightclub in Westlake, which if you're in the LA area at all, that should have been a red flag from the get-go. Like, why is there a nightclub out there? And I remember him coming up to me and saying, you know, I remember you from high school. And I was like, oh, you went to El Camino? And he was like, well, no, you were in a night school class and I was in that class. And it was a college credit class that I took with my boyfriend who passed back in junior year. And I remember I would show up to this class in like sweats with a messy bun. And I was with my boyfriend. I was like so happy that we were like, okay, let's go to, get a college credit together, whatever. And he was like, when he passed, I remember you posted, ready for this throwback, on your MySpace, this long paragraph about, his passing and how you were feeling. And I felt so like deeply for you. I wanted to reach out to you, but I knew you didn't know me. And at the time I'm like, oh my God, that's so sweet. Like what a gem you are.
Sweetest thing I've ever heard.
And now I'm like, you're a fucking stalker. Why didn't I see any of this coming when it was happening? But, blissfully rose-colored glasses painting all of my red flags pink.
So were you weren't even friends with him on MySpace?
No. But by the time I got home.
Were you in high school?
No, this was in college. This was college days. Yeah. And by the time I got home from the club, he had found me on Facebook, followed me on Instagram, and texted me saying, hey, his name is Daniel in the book, Daniel from the club. Again, oh my God, I'm being pursued. It's no, stalker behavior, like very red flaggy. He pursued me, he wined and dined me, and the entire time, everyone in my circle was like, oh my God, she's finally found someone that she doesn't have to fix. She's finally found someone that just shows up and is like doing like the good deeds and keeping her safe.
Did he have a good job? Is that kind of what they were thinking too? That he could bring stability?
He had I guess it depends on your definition of a good job. He worked really hard. He was a coach, an athletic coach, in a more profitable sport than others, I guess. But, like when he wanted to propose to me, he went and did private lessons every single day to like make the cash to go buy my ring. So like there was a sense of that. Yeah. He flaunted like, let's go to dinner. Let me take, like our first vacation, he took me to Napa like 2 months in for Valentine's Day. And people were like, you're peaking way too high, dude. What are you doing? So it was coming from somewhere. And it made it feel very lavish and fairy tale-esque at the time.
So how long did you guys date before he started to talk about marriage? Looking back on it, does it feel love bomby?
Oh, that's such an interesting question because the love bomby question usually gets brought up with the guy that's coming after this.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely love bomby, and very like all the gifts, all the vacations, but like weird jealousy from the beginning that I always negotiated with myself in my head saying, well, this is a weird career that I'm in. It's not normal for people to understand that someone's going to be kissing me on set in a scene. And it became a very toxic cycle. So he would get jealous about something. We would have a big fight. I would start to pull away because I would recognize that this wasn't great. And then it would be, I'm so sorry, like tons of apologizing. Let's go to this really nice restaurant tomorrow. Like you deserve, or let's go on a shopping spree, or let's book a vacation. And unfortunately, one of my love languages is acts of service and gifts. So I was like, oh, see, he really does love me. Oh, see, it was stuck in that like traditional dopamine hit cycle that we all know from toxic relationships. But I was so young at the time that I wasn't aware enough, or if I was aware, I wasn't strong enough to be like, this is whack. I need to not move forward with this. It was dreamy, and I rationalized all of the things that he had problems with, you know?
Yeah, I think going back to the gifts thing, that's not something that I think people are taught to really look out for when they're younger, that it can be such a red flag. Because my ex, I also I was married at 20 or 21,
Oh, wow.
so young. And, it was a little different because he was physically abusive and stuff like that. But one thing is that it would always be, okay, well, let me go get you flowers. Let me go get you this. And what's funny enough is I knew enough to know that was bad. I would tell him, hey, that actually makes me feel worse because I think I've read that abusive people do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I could see in your circumstance, since it was just more so these fights about jealousy, and then, oh, well, let's connect. Let's go out to eat. And it feels like he's seeing you because that is your love language and you just want to feel seen at that time.
Yeah. And like, came with all the waterfall tears, and I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, let's go to therapy. I want to like work through it. All the typical things that you fall for when you're 20, 21.
Yeah. So even with those things, you felt good about continuing to get engaged, and you just saw enough good there that you decided you wanted to move forward.
Yeah, because when we were good, we were good. It was, and I kept telling myself, we'll work through it in therapy, because the crux of it was the career thing. It was, I'm not comfortable. At first, it was, I'm not comfortable with you having to make out with your scene partner in this specific movie. And then it was, well, I'm not comfortable with you going out to dinner if there's any male cast members there. Well, I'm not comfortable with you having a conversation. Like it was one thing after. So unreasonable. And like, he met me as an actress. Like, he knew that this was what my job was. And to be very clear, I was sympathetic as to, yeah, I get it. This is really uncomfortable. Like, maybe he needs to go to therapy. Maybe he needs to come on set and watch how not sexy these scenes are when they're like, hey, can you pause and like move your head this way and tilt your butt to the back more while like this crew guy comes in and puts a Fernie pad under you. Like, it's so not cute.
Yeah.
So I jumped through hoops trying to make him comfortable, and always rationalized that we would fix it in therapy.
Yeah, no. And I think since he was willing to go to therapy and you had been in therapy for so long, you're thinking, well, it'll probably work and we'll just work it out as long as it's not a core issue, because you guys still had a good relationship at the time. It's just this jealousy thing. But I can't imagine having somebody be that jealous when you're in that industry, because he did know that you were an actress when you guys got together. So it's kind of like, well, what
were you expecting?
Expect?
Yeah. And now looking back on it, I can see there were things that were said that were so not okay, that were meant to kind of beat me down. But in the moment, I didn't track it. I remember once when we were in therapy and we were talking about the career stuff, and he said, it's not like she's doing the lead in an Adam Sandler movie. Then it would be fine. But she's doing these like little independent movies. And I was like, dude, there are so many actors in LA that would die to be booking the stuff that I'm booking. Like, how dare you? And I remember,
it's so demeaning.
It's so
what
demeaning.
A horrible thing to say.
So demeaning. And that led to, really offensive offers that, again, at the time didn't seem offensive. When he would say, this was when we were already married and living together. He would say, if you want to continue working as an actress, then we should keep splitting all of the bills, because I put in for, rent, and I was paying my bills that I incurred. And he was like, but if you want to give up acting and just be a stay-at-home wife, like, I'll take care of everything. And at the time, I wasn't like, oh, you're a sexist freak and you're trying to get me to give up my financial control so you can manipulate me. I was just like, that's weird. But no, I really want to keep acting. So no, thank you. I'll keep paying my half of things.
What a manipulative thing to say. He's basically saying, give up your dream and you'll never have to work again, which a lot of these people, my ex was very similar. I did work as a background actress and a nanny when I was out in Atlanta, but he didn't want me to have a career. Like,
Yeah.
at all. He was very much like, I'll cover everything, despite the fact we were super broke. I absolutely did need to work, but it was that financial control of, I would like to be the one in charge and I want you dependent on me and my income.
And that is how abuse begins, because once they get you to not have a financial outlet that you can fall back on, you're dependent on them. And then it comes like bringing you away from the people that are in your life. And it was all the red flags of what could have been very, very, very bad. And now when I look back on it, I'm like, thank God I got out when I did. I also was just not the one. Like after we got married, it was, when you had your hair super Barbie blonde in high school, like that was super hot. I think maybe you should like consider going back to that. And I was like, I would never book work like that. What? That's insane. What do you mean?
Well, maybe that's the point. Maybe he didn't want you to book work.
100%.
I do find it. Yeah, it's just weird as well for him to say when you were in high school.
Right. When you were a child.
That was really.
Yeah. And
that was really hot.
It becomes very ironic when we get to where and who he ended up with. But, asking me if I would ever consider getting a boob job and like trying to like set me up with a specific trainer who would make my body look a certain way. Like, I was like, dude, you married me knowing I was the president of the itty bitty titty committee. Breastfeeding was like my worst experience because my boobs were so big. I love being able to not wear a bra. Like I am not the right person for you to try and start modifying. Like you married the wrong one.
No, it's the best. I got a breast reduction because I was on the other side of it. I was a G.
Oh my God.
Or something. It was horrible. And now I think I'm like a B and it's perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't have to wear a bra. So if somebody was trying to convince me to get a boob job, no thank you.
Yeah.
It's not all it's cracked up to be, for sure. But yeah, I've known somebody like that. It's funny hearing all of these details about him because I know someone in my life who was really toxic and married to one of my friends, and he was so like this. Like, if you work out, I will get you workout sets if you stick to this. Just super weird trying to buy her personal trainers and stuff. So it sounds like he was really just trying to mold you into this stay-at-home bleach blonde. I don't know what he had in his mind.
Well, I can tell you, he had in his mind who he ended up having an affair with.
Yeah. So do you want to get into that? Because did you ever think that this man would be capable of an affair?
No, like not in a million years. And when it came out, everyone was shook. His mother, my mother, like everyone was like, not him. And look, I had my fair share of relationships. I've been boy crazy since like elementary school. I'm not new to the toxic high school, let me check your phone. I've been like that with many of my exes. This man, I never felt the need to check his phone. I remember saying days before I found out about the affair to one of my friends, I don't think he's done anything physically. I don't think he has the balls to. And I vastly misjudged the size of his balls.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So why did you even start to say that to your friend? So things were not going good at your marriage at that point. I remember you talking about how y'all were just in therapy and things were really rough at that time.
Yeah, we were in therapy and I was jumping through hoops to try and do everything that he'd asked and like weird requests. Like, well, I went to all of his sports games that he coached and he'd be like, well, you don't support me enough. You should come to the practices. And I was like, well, that's fucking weird. Do you want to come to my auditions? Like how, but okay. So I'd get a coffee and I'd go to the practices, like super weird stuff like that. He wanted to be having like 50 Shades of Grey sex 3 times a day. Like it was a lot. But I was trying to be like, look, I just had this like incredible wedding that my mom worked her ass off to give me with like all of our friends and family. I have to like I have to put in the work. Like, this is what everybody says, marriage is work. Let's show up. So I did that consistently, and it felt like he just kept doing less and less and less. And when I would call him out on it, it would just be tears. I don't know why I'm doing this to you. I'm so sorry. And I didn't understand what was going on. He eventually went on a work trip to go coach his 2 teams that he did once a year, a trip that I always went on. And he told me that we couldn't afford to do it this year, which was strange because he was making more money than he had in the past. And I just, in my gut, I was like, something's not right. And to this day, I have no idea what his email password was. He left it open on the computer in our office, and I was at home and started hearing it ding, ding, ding. And I went in and looked at it, and it was an Uber receipt going from where he was supposed to be to a different location. And I was like, something's not right. So I started going through the emails, didn't find anything, went to the trash email, and like all the receipts were there.
Oh my gosh, they were just sitting there in the trash.
Yep. And like,
so what did you find?
Really shitty receipts. Like, not just, oh, you were at the Four Seasons where we go, that's like down the street from our house. It was, oh, you were at the Four Seasons while I was winning my Best Actress award for like my film that I produced and directed that was like this huge monumental moment, and you told me that you couldn't be there for some bullshit reason. And oh, that day that I was sick and like had to go to the doctors, you ended up at the hotel that all of our wedding guests stayed at. Like, very strange dates that lined up, and taking her on repeat dates of how he had like wined and dined me, like this exact way we had spent our Valentines together 2 years prior. Like shopping sprees at the same stores that he used to take me to, like very weird replicas of things.
Yeah, he was just acting out your relationship with somebody else.
With somebody else who was very young and just out of high school and very blonde, and has since gotten a boob job.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so how did you end up finding out who it was and her age?
So it's really funny. A lot of this is written about in the book, and it's so funny because people are probably listening to this being like, she's talking about the whole book. The affair part that I discovered and went through with my ex-husband, I think is the first 2 or 3 chapters. And then everything else that happened is beyond that. And I, at first, was like, I don't even need to write about this. I just need to be like, I was married and I got cheated on. And then all this shit happened. And I remember coming back from my travels, and I had lunch with my friend, and she's like, no, Gabrielle, you have to write about all this. This is like a fucking episode of CSI. Like, so many of us have gone through this. You have to detail it. So to find out who she was, I found one of the emails that was a receipt for the Four Seasons that was a mile from our house. And it had 2 names on it. And one was not my husband's name, but it was a man's name. And the other was a woman's name. And I called the Four Seasons and disguised my voice and was like, hi, my husband and I sometimes role play too. Like, oh my God. And we booked a room there with like with a massage, and I can't remember the name he booked it under because we were role playing. Like, it was like the worst fucking excuse ever. And
I can't imagine that this person believed that, because that is such
I must have gotten like the ditzy girl on the other end of the line. I don't know. It was so bad. And she was like, oh yeah, let me pull it up. And so she ended up giving me her name in the reservation. And I looked her up online, and a very young, very blonde girl was staring back at me. And my best friend and I decided to make a fake Snapchat account, and we followed her and her friend for the next week and a half as she gallivanted around Miami with my husband.
Oh my gosh. Did any part of you want to blow up his phone at that point? Because you just totally went into detective mode and you were just watching from afar. Did any part of you want to impulsively be like, I know exactly what you're doing and where you are right now?
There was a part of me, of course, but the long game was get a lawyer, get ahead of it, be the first one to file. Don't let him know how much I know. I still don't think he knows how much information I gathered. I know from talking to my ex-sister-in-law, who is married to his older half-brother, who they're now estranged after all of this, and her and I still have a relationship. She's lovely. And
That's awesome.
I remember hearing through the grapevine that his dad, my ex-father-in-law, thought we had hired a private detective to find out everything. And I was like, no, that's just a woman on a mission. Thank you.
I just wanted to know everything. So, oh my gosh. And she was 19, right?
She was 19 when I found out about her. I think she was 18 when they started dating or talking or doing whatever was happening. But the proof that I found dated 6 months back. So it had been going on for half a year. And we had only been married for almost 2.
Do you know how they met?
I do. I know that they met at the gym.
Okay.
As bro-y as can be, you know.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh, red flags with this guy. So what was it like filing for divorce and you're in this in-between period? Well, obviously, I guess you confronted him. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, he came home from his work trip and I had a process server like waiting to hand him the papers, and we had a conversation that's written about in the book, but it was more or less like, I know everything. And he was very manipulative in, I think we were just too young. I never wanted this to happen. I want you to go on and be so happy, and I don't want this to ruin your life. And, you know, the typical narcissistic shit that someone will say when they have been caught.
Yeah.
And the one interesting thing he said to me in that conversation was, please don't come after like my new sports deal. And I was like, well, then say it. And he was like, say what? And I was like, say it. Say what? Say it. That I've been having another relationship. And that was all he would say. Having no idea how much I knew about her and the details. And it just, I was like, okay. And I got up and I walked out of the house that he and I were thankfully renting, and felt like the biggest weight had been lifted off of my shoulders. And I knew in my core, like, I had just dodged an army of fucking snipers, and this is my second chance in life.
Yeah. So you didn't necessarily feel heartbroken. I mean, well, you're heartbroken that it happened, but you didn't necessarily feel like you had to navigate like missing him or anything like that.
100%. And I'm so thankful that I didn't have that on top of all of the other mess of emotions I was dealing with to deal with. It was such a blessing. And it goes back to the abandonment thing that we were talking about earlier. So the fear of abandonment when I love someone, they die, turned into when I love someone, they leave. And I hadn't healed that. And so I attracted a man who would abandon me in one of the most heinous ways possible. And the universe was like, okay, Gabrielle, are we ready to go heal this? And I was like, no, I'm good. Thanks. Let's go to door number 2.
You're like, but there's a great option over here. So do you want to get into who the book calls Javier?
Yes.
This man is, he's an interesting one for sure.
So I was fresh off of handing my husband divorce papers. I think 2 weeks later was when I got this DM. Let me be clear. I had been in a miserable, unhappy situation for 6 to 8 months before then. And I had known about the cheating for 2 weeks before I handed him those papers. So it had been, I had mentally checked out quite a while ago. And 2 weeks after I had left my house, I got a DM from someone that I had gone on 2 very casual dates with, like 6-7 years ago, before I had ever met my husband. And he is an actor. So I was like, oh, someone who's not going to be psychotic and jealous about my career because you're a well-known actor in this space. Great. But it was always really casual. Like, we had gone out twice. We had danced. We had made out. It was fun. And it was never serious. It was the one time in my life I had ever successfully had a casual fling situation. And he DM'd me and was like, oh my God, where have you been? And I was like, well, how much time do you have? And he invited me to hang out at the beach, and we went to catch up. And that was the downfall of casual.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So did it get deep pretty fast, the conversations that you guys were having?
It did. And look, I'm an open book, so it never feels, oh, wow, this is getting really deep really fast, because I can be on the street and people will be like, tell me about your trauma. And I'm like, okay. It's never, not deep when I'm having good conversations with people. He had also just gone through something that was pretty heavy. He had lost his brother to suicide about 1.5 years before we went to go hang out. And so we talked about that. I obviously have lost a fair share of people in my life. So that was a thing that we really connected on. And I felt like I could really offer some support and guidance. Although I will stand by this, he presented as, not that you're ever on the other side of something like that, but being out of the depths of where grief can keep you. And yeah, we had a really wonderful day and spent the whole day together. And he was like, do you want to go dancing on Friday night? And I was like, let me think. Dancing with this hot Latin man? Sure. Yes, I would. Thank you. I'm single. Like, I deserve to go dancing and have a hot makeout sesh. Yes. And I did. And from that night that we went dancing, it just was 0 to 100. Meeting his family, talking about the future, making plans years down the road, and him inviting me on a month-long trip to Italy that was happening in a couple weeks.
Oh my gosh. Was that a hard decision to decide to go, or it's like the easiest decision of your life?
It was the easiest decision of my life. I was like, oh, wait, you want me to go travel around Europe for a month? Yeah. And
had you been?
I had not. I had been to like random parts to work. I had never like been to Europe. And it's so funny because I would always talk to my ex-husband and say, before we ever talk about having kids, I need to go to Europe for 3 to 4 weeks and just like, I want to like have a big Europe trip and like experience that. So all of the universal signs to make you like dismiss the red flags, which, to be fair, the only red flag that was happening in this specific scenario was the speed of what was happening. I also didn't have the terminology love bombing until years later when I was on TikTok and was like, oh shit, this is what happened to me. I think there's 2 ways that love bombing happens. The intentional kind, where it's like my ex-husband, where it's manipulative and you're like, how can I like gain control over this person and make them depend on me and make me the center of their universe. And the unintentional kind, how it happened with Javier, was he had some deep hole in him from the stuff that he had gone through. And when he met me, it started to feel better. And he was like, oh, this is finally, I want more of this. I want more of this. I want all of you all the time. And no one can fill those holes inside of you except for you. So eventually it's not going to work anymore. So while we were on this like completely high trajectory, at some point he realized, oh shit, this isn't working anymore. And at the height of our honeymoon phase, 48 hours before we were getting on a plane, he told me he needed to go by himself and broke up with me.
So had you already booked the tickets?
Oh, girl,
because
booked the ticket.
I would
booked
well,
the
I
tickets.
mean, obviously
booked the tickets. Packed the bag. Like he told me on the phone, and I was staring at my backpack that he and I had bought at REI that was fully packed and ready to go. I mean, it was, yeah. And I had, thankfully, you know, because he was like, "I'll buy your ticket." I had such a thing from my ex-husband. I was like, "No, I will buy my ticket. I will finance like my, you know, my stuff for it." And I sold my wedding ring to be able to do that.
Oh my gosh, the layers.
The layers.
I cannot imagine getting that phone call. So what were you thinking immediately? Were you thinking, okay, well, I guess I'm not going? I'm not, like, I have to cancel everything? Or were you thinking that you would just go anyway, or that you would try to change his mind?
I didn't know. It was so abrupt from being like, it really went from like, meet my family, we're going to have babies together, like this is the love of my life, to I just don't feel anything for you. And a lot of it was blamed on the grief, which I know this is a layered topic, and I think once people read both Eat, Pray, Ephemeral and the sequel, The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl, which is everything that happens after this trip, you'll have a deeper perspective of why myself and my fan base will call bullshit on the blaming the grief. I'm also speaking about that from dealing with a lot of grief in my life myself. But it was basically, he said when he fell in love with me, it opened up the floodgates, and everything that he pushed down so far came like rising to the surface, and he like felt disconnected from the world. And I, at the time, being so in love with this person and having so much, you know, sympathy and compassion for losing people and death and grief, was like fiercely protecting him. My mom was like, I'm going to murder this person. And I was like, you don't understand. And my friends were like, fuck this fool. And I was like, no, but it's not. It's so much more complicated than that. It wasn't.
But maybe he's still my husband, or maybe he's still the love of my life. You know?
Look, even his mother was like, there is no way he went to bed in love with you and woke up just not. Like, what? Everybody was like, this is batshit crazy. It was wild. So to answer your question, I had probably 24 hours of just complete panic and like shock. Part of me was like, maybe I can find someone else to come with me. And I was like, that's insane. Like, who's going to just be like, sure, let's go to Europe tomorrow. And part of me, you know, my stepdad was like, you can just come up here, because he lives up in Taos, New Mexico. He's like, you can just come up here, get out of LA. And I really sat with it and was like, look, again, the irony, like, it's now looking back on it, it's hilarious to me, because I had this fear of abandonment, and I had gone through these things throughout my life, and I married someone who abandoned me. And then the universe was like, cool, are we ready to go heal this? And I was like, no, let's go over here. And then I got into a relationship with someone who literally abandoned me 2 days before we were going on a vacation that he invited me on. Like, I was like, okay, universe, I got it. I need to learn how to be alone. I need to love myself. I need to fix this fear of abandonment. And what a better way to do that than to go across the world by myself and figure it the fuck out. So that's what I did.
Were you scared to do that? Because I feel like I would be scared to travel abroad alone, like from a safety standpoint, but also just, I don't know, there's something that feels a little uncomfortable with doing a trip like that alone, but 100%. Leaning into it.
Look, man, the only things I knew about traveling alone was that there was, you know, the movie Taken, and people like don't come back sometimes.
Scariest movie of all time.
And people were like, yeah, just go stay in hostels. I'm like, you mean like the horror movie where like people get dismembered? What do you mean? Like, so yeah, no, of course. And my mom, being from Kansas, was like, well, I'm sorry, you're just gonna go by yourself? What? Now, having done multiple solo trips and being very well traveled, like that, I understand where people get that fear from. A lot of it's media driven. I feel safer abroad usually more than I do in Los Angeles, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's a conditioned thing that the U.S. has made us believe, that nowhere else is as safe or as good as here. And I think this year has proven that is so highly incorrect.
Absolutely. I don't feel super safe here.
Yeah.
So.
And so there was a lot of fear in it. I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no plans, and I'm so type A. That was like very not
Same.
comfortable for me. But I knew in my gut, I was like, it's too obvious with like what I'm supposed to go work on to not say yes to this. And I went to Barnes and Noble the day before I left on my trip, and I was walking through the journal section, and there was this brown journal with an owl on it. And an owl has always been my symbol with my dad. Like they show up in the weirdest places. I'll see them in the middle of the day, since I was 7, like just constant.
Wow.
And I saw this journal, and I was like, I'm supposed to get this journal, and I'm going to write a book. And
Wow.
I knew from that moment that I was going to end up on podcast talking about this book that I was going to write. And here we are.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy, because I was wondering when that idea really came to you and you realized you were going to do that. And had you ever written before? Was this a dream that you had, or you were just like, I am making this moment into something?
Pretty much that. I could bullshit the hell out of an English essay, and I loved my creative writing class in high school, but no, I was not. I was working to be an actress. I had just did that film that I had won the award for that I also directed. So I was really excited to get into that. And I just knew. And it wasn't like, people are like, oh, that's cool, you like journaled throughout your trip and then turned it into a book. If you open that journal, it's chapter 1, and it's so close to how the finished book ended up being published. Like my soul channeled it. I wrote it in a month and a half, and I can tell you from writing the sequel, that's ridiculous.
No, I can't imagine. I've been trying to write a book for years. I'm like,
it's a lot.
I can't imagine, doing that. So in your mind, did you know that you wanted to have it finished during the trip?
No, I think it was like therapy for me, and it just kept coming out. I would spend hours writing. Like when I was in Amsterdam, I was staying at this really cute little apartment that was a friend of a friend that they set me up with. And I would sit there for 6 hours drinking tea and writing and writing and writing. And I would take the train to my next location and be writing and writing and writing. And there's something so special about feeling something in your body and physically writing it pen to paper, because it comes out in a different way as opposed to when you're typing. And it just really allowed me to process everything that I had gone through, look at where all of these things were coming from. The book, what's so great about it, it's so fun, and it feels like you're like hanging out with me across Europe, like listening to some like crazy Netflix story. But because I'm doing this like deep healing and like uncovering all of these truths about myself and my life and like what could this mean, people pick it up because they want a fun beach read and then DM me, and they're like, well, I've been in tears for the past 24 hours because this has just changed my life. And it's allowed so many people who have read it to have this introspective experience that I don't think they were expecting to have. And it's been so special to be able to connect with those people around the world. Like, that's what's so amazing about having books that are also like on Kindle and on audiobooks. Like, I have people who DM me from South Africa and from New Zealand and like all parts of the world. And it's really incredible to see this shitty situation that I went through become like a movement for people.
Yeah, that's amazing. How did you end up coming up with the title for the book? Because I have read Eat, Pray, Love. I also read that book.
It is not that. So
it's not that.
It is. Let's be clear. It's a satirical play on that title. After we had that phone call where Javier broke my heart into a million pieces, the next day he came and picked me up from my mom's house, because that's where you're living when you're 27 and get divorced.
Absolutely. Same.
And we went and sat in his car and had a conversation where I was like, I think I'm still going to go on the trip. And he was like shocked, and he's like, I'm so proud of you. Like, this is amazing. I think it's going to bring so much goodness. And when he dropped me off from that meeting, he's like, so how are you feeling, Gabs? And I was like I'm about to go on a journey of eat, pray, fuck my life. And that's the title of the book I'm going to write.
Love that.
And I went inside and I watched Eat, Pray, Love for the first time, if you can actually believe that. Had never read the book. And sat there with my mouth on the floor, because I was like, oh, this is literally my life. And yeah, took my journal the next day and started writing the first day I got in London.
Wow. So yeah, I'm sure you don't want to give away the whole book, but do you want to talk about any of the parts of your trip that were really meaningful to you or that stand out?
It's so funny. I feel like we've talked about so much, and it's literally the first 3 chapters that we've covered.
It is actually, guys.
All of it starts once we get to Europe. So I did 6 countries over the span of the month. I was in London, Paris, Amsterdam, Barcelona, Mykonos, Rome, and Sicily. And it felt like each place gave me different parts of myself back that I had been missing, that had broken off from the different traumas I had experienced in my life. It was really uncomfortable to be alone at first, although I feel like the universe took really good care of me. Like, the first stop I had was in London, and a really good friend of mine from high school lives there now with her boyfriend that she met abroad, who is now her husband. And so our flights were originally booked to London and then to go on to Rome. And I was like, okay, so I'll just go to London. That's my trajectory. Yes, we sat together on the plane all 10 hours.
Well, I was going to ask that too, because you had already bought your tickets. So you're awkwardly sitting on this plane together.
Yeah.
And then I feel like if I were so in love with this guy at the airport, I would think to myself, wait, are we really... We're really going our separate ways? Are you sure you're not going to change your mind? We're here.
Yeah.
So.
It was all of those things. And then as if it was the cliffhanger of the first Netflix show of a series that you're watching, he was like, maybe we should meet up towards the end of the trip if we're both feeling healed and like good. And I was like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
It was wild. And he kept me on a roller coaster throughout the trip, for sure. But being able to land in London and know that I could go to a familiar place and not be completely alone in that first country was really incredible for me. Her and her boyfriend were obviously at work every day, so I was off like adventuring around and like doing my own thing. And then the next place I went, I had gotten set up at an apartment from a friend's friend. So it was like I didn't know the person that was hosting me, but at least there was some kind of like home base
connection.
And then the place I went to after that was my first hostel. And after that, it was just hostel, which, yes, there is a horror movie about them, but they're like adult summer camps. They're so fun. It's a great way to meet people. I met so many cool people throughout those hostel stays. It's a whole different world that got opened up to me.
How do you pick a good hostel? Because I would be so nervous about you're sleeping in rooms with strangers?
Yeah, so
is that how it works?
Yeah, you can there's different options. They have all female dorms, all male dorms. They have mixed dorms. They also have private rooms at hostels. But yeah, essentially it's like bunk beds like you would see in a summer camp. Some are really janky and some are like, this is a 4-star hotel just with, 6 bunks inside
Roommates.
this room. Yeah. And hostelworld.com. It's an app, Hostel World. It's like Airbnb. You go through, there's like thousands of reviews, you get pictures, and it's never led me wrong.
Wow, that's great. Are they all twin beds? What if a couple goes? Do couples ever go?
I think if a couple is there, they have to like you have to buy 2 beds because they're all single beds. But there are like there's private rooms in different hostels that you could also get that you pay a little more for. It's also really affordable. That's why I was able to do a month in Europe for the $5,000 that my wedding ring sold for.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of experiences for that amount of money.
Yeah, definitely worth it.
Which place was your favorite, and also that you feel like you learned the most?
Barcelona. I think the people that I fell in with at my hostel in Barcelona and the one specific person that I met there, really, that was the turning point in people reflecting my story back to me and being like, hey, actually, like, none of this was okay. Why are you protecting this person? And it was like the first time where I could see that I was not being treated how I deserved.
Yeah. And were these people that were not connected to Javier?
Oh,
so
yeah.
They didn't know him.
Yeah.
So maybe them hearing it and them not having just built-in loyalty or compassion towards the situation, they can call it as it is and say, hey, that's really not okay.
100%. And I feel like it's hard to get that in your own life when you're at home and there's people that know your story and your relationships and they've like heard, the relationship build up and they've seen the dynamic change. It's nothing is more humbling than having 100,000 plus people read your story and be like, oh, this is like, let us tell you like the unfiltered version of what you went through.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I've always wanted to go to Barcelona. That is on my list.
It's amazing. 10 out of 10 recommend. I could live there.
Yeah. So was your book done when you left? You said it was barely touched while you were there or after you left.
Yeah. So I wrote 3/4 of it on the trip in the journal. And then when I came home, I transferred it to my computer, which was like a great edit process, and finished it. And the only thing I really had to finish was the first couple of chapters about my ex-husband and the affair and all of that stuff that I wasn't even convinced I was going to put in, because the real journey and story is everything that happened with Europe. And I shopped it to the big 5 publishers with my manager who, represents me for acting and directing. Everyone said no. Everyone was like, it's too in your face. It's too raw. There's too many F-bombs. I don't think there's a big enough audience for this. And so I ended up self-publishing it. That was the biggest redirection from the universe that I ever could have imagined, because I know now from publishing 3 books and doing my audiobook with a company how vastly different the royalty payments are in what you can make as far as self-publishing versus publishing. And in 2020, Eat, Pray, FML went viral multiple times on TikTok, and it's been a bestseller since then, and it changed my life.
Oh my God. I didn't realize that you had self-published this book.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What was the process like for that? Was it overwhelming?
It was, but I was very lucky. I got introduced to this amazing woman who became my mentor, named Kelly Randis, who wrote a really incredible, also self-published bestseller called Spilled Milk, about her life as a child and enduring abuse and taking her father to court. That's a really powerful story. And she really mentored me through the process and was like, this is how you upload everything to KDP. Like, you can Google all of the things, but to have someone there walking you through it was a huge blessing, and made me feel so much more comfortable taking that jump. And then I did the audiobook with a company at the time because I didn't know how that even would happen.
I would have no idea.
I did the sequel, which after the first one became really popular, everyone was like, okay, but what happened after Europe? And I was like, oh, I guess I have to finish whatever my story was.
Finish the story.
So I started writing it, but I had no idea what the ending was because I was still living it. And the second one spans 2 years of my life. Eat, Pray, FML, as ridiculous as it sounds, spans 3.5 months from the time where I found out about the affair to when I came home from Europe, and the entire relationship and heartbreak that happened in between. So it was a lot different writing the second one. But the second book, I did my own audiobook independently. And it was, it's crazy to see the difference between the financial change. So I really, when people don't get that job or someone says no, like it would have been so easy after hearing all those no's from the big five publishers to be like, I guess this just sucks and isn't that good, and I should just not think I'm a writer. But it was the universe really redirecting me to a better path that was going to give me financial freedom.
Wow, that's amazing. In regards to healing, do you feel like you healed more during the journey of those 3 months in Europe or those 2 years after?
Oh, what a good question. I feel like I healed more in the 2 years after, but I feel like the Europe journey was ripping off all of the Band-Aids that had been on.
Yeah.
And the 2 years after was tending to those wounds and actually allowing them to breathe and heal.
Yeah, because reading the book, it feels like it is just a journey of you kind of uncovering your eyes and realizing the situation for what it was and the patterns in your life. So I guess the next book is more so the healing and putting it all back together.
Yeah, the second book is, I came back from that Europe trip and it was like getting off the merry-go-round and everything stopped. And it was like, oh, I am back in my childhood bedroom at my mom's home. I am divorced and I am still pretty fucking heartbroken. And it was a lot. And pulling myself out of that depression, going and trying to look for closure in places that it was inevitably not going to be found. And new relationships that began and old relationships that resurfaced. It was a lot to sift through. It was very dramatic. Thankfully, there's a happy ending, but that book was really hard for me to go back and edit because there was nothing in Eat, Pray, FML that I wasn't proud of. Even like the stuff that you would look at and be like, it's kind of embarrassing. I was like, yeah, but like, look at what I learned from it. There was nothing that I felt bad about as a human. There's stuff in the second book that I had that weighed on me and that I felt guilt around that I had to work through with my now husband. And look, it all ended up the way that it should. We got to where we needed to be because of all of those difficult things. But the people that read the books consecutively now that they're out together, usually the response I get is, I had the most fun reading Eat, Pray, FML and learned all this like really amazing stuff. But the second book is like my Bible because it really allows me to like learn and hold on to those principles that like you discovered in the first one. And that's really special to me to be able to know that the stuff that weighed on me at one point that I had guilt I needed to work through has resonated with people in such a way.
Yeah. What has it been like healing since that last book came out? Just the last few years and what your life is like now?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm perfect. Everything's great all the time.
You're like, I've actually never been sad ever again.
Look, I always like to remind people that healing is not linear. There are days where you will feel like you can't keep going and days where you're like on top of the world and think everything is going to be great for the rest of your life. I think that I've continued to be very aware of things that come up. You know, when I had my son, it brought up a lot of fear around losing him and being abandoned, because that's been my story in the past, is the men I love most will die. And now I have this little being that I love more than any of those men, and I'm trying to keep him so safe. And it's been a lot to work through. So I think it's just different layers. You're always working through different layers of your genetic makeup and the things that present themselves in our lives that we have to look at and acknowledge and be like, okay, do I want to keep this, or do I want to let this be a part of my story that doesn't have to define me?
Yeah. Despite everything that you've been through, would you do everything the same way, do you think?
100%. If I had to do everything the exact same way to end up where I am now, I would do it 10 times over. For sure.
That. Yeah, I think because I joined a religious cult when I was 18, and obviously I wish I hadn't. In a way, it makes me sad that I had to go through that, and I'm sure it's sad for your past self that you were cheated on and that you had all of those horrible experiences, but you also would not be who you are today, and you would not have the exact child that you have today as well if all of that hadn't happened.
No, and I think it's so important to remember that. I am a really big believer in everything happens for a reason, not in the toxic positivity way of like, everything happens for a reason, it's going to be fine. Like, no, shit sucks a lot of the time. But I can look back at all of my really big traumas and tragedies and the death of my father and the death of my boyfriend and all of these things and say, do I wish they happened? No, of course not. But for me personally, my life was shifted and altered and changed because of those experiences. And I can find the reasons in those experiences that I can now be thankful for that helped me grow into the person that I am today. Because if you can't do that, like what's the point? It's just meaningless tragedy. I choose to not live my life that way and to find some deeper meaning in it.
Absolutely. Where can people find you now, and what are you up to?
So many things. So I am on Instagram at Gabrielle Stone, and I am on TikTok at Gabrielle_Stone. And you can find both the books, Eat, Pray, FML, and The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl on Amazon. They're also available on my website, Signed, where we have a bunch of merch and fun stuff, which is eatprayfml.com. I also came out with a journal called Fuck Off, I'm Healing, which is a really, thank you. It's a step-by-step guide to kind of undoing all the shit that life throws at you. And there's prompts in there and stories where I really kind of guide you through working and digging into all the stuff that you might be afraid of digging into, so you don't have to do it alone. That's also on Amazon and on my website. And I just finished a third book. It's not a third in the FML series. I actually co-wrote it with my husband, and it's called Finding You Through Finding Me. And we each write our own chapter in the larger section. And it's different traumas, different experiences, different life events that we've gone through, the death of a parent, the birth of a child, divorce, addiction, and we write our own experiences within that topic and how we individually healed from those and how healing all of those individually allowed us to find the healthy relationship that we're in now.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. When is that going to be out?
So after I've bashed all of the publishing versus self-publishing, we're looking at different options right now to decide if we're going to go the traditional publishing route or do the self-publishing route. So it depends on which way we end up choosing. That'll kind of infer what the timeline is, but it's done and it's finished, and I'm really proud of it. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing the male perspective on a lot of these issues as well.
Yeah, I love the name of it as well, because I think that there is a lot of healing that comes in relationship with your partner. And what you were saying about, you were kind of checked out of your marriage, or not checked out, but you were already going through a lot of pain before, and how you had moved on. And I'm like, I know people would judge me, whatever, but I met my now husband the week after I filed for divorce from my ex.
Love that for you.
So it was great. I left in January 2020 after a very scary assault, and then I met my husband in March, and I love the title of that book, because that has so been our experience. Is he's really helped me walk through a lot of that, and it's so healing to get to do that in relationship as well.
I love that. I'm so happy for you. I think that people ask me a lot if you can have a healthy relationship if you're not healed, And as long as you're willing to do the work continuously and the other person is willing to do that with you and for themselves, you can have any situation you want. There are people that feel they want to go be alone for a year, and I'm like, more power to you. And there's people that are like, I got out of this relationship and fell into this one. As long as you're not sticking band-aids over everything and you're allowing stuff to heal and you're doing the work to do that, there's so many different formulas of how you can find your happy.
No, absolutely. Because I think a lot of people, they do have it in your mind that you can't date right after, or that you have to be fully healed. But are we, just like the podcast name, are we all ever fully, truly healed? You know, I think that there's a lot of things. We're all just constantly in progress and trying to make do with the cards we were given.
It's part of being human. It's like, it's part of the human experience to continuously heal and find new ways and grow. So it's like, it's part of it. You're going to go through it. You might as well embrace it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so amazing. And yeah, I will link everything in the show notes. That way people can find you on social media, and also link your books. And that way they can keep an eye out for your coming book.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely chatting with you.
And that wraps up this episode of Healedish. I am so grateful to Gabrielle for agreeing to come on to share her story. It is a story that I've been following for such a long time, and it has changed so many lives. So I'm going to link her books in the show notes. That way you guys can go and check it out. And it would mean the world to me if you guys could leave a positive review for the show. It really helps it grow. And with all of that being said, I will see you guys next week for another episode of Healedish.